All right, here we are. Okay, hoping that you guys can hear me fine. Let's just do this. And I'll say hello. Welcome, welcome. I'm hoping that my mic is working fine and that this is clear. Looking forward to today. And while we talk about the number 3, which is really a fabulous number to work with when we're painting. Hi, Angelica. Great to see you. Hi, Bernd. Nice to see you too. And let me know if this is clear so you can hear me. Okay, great. That's great. Thanks, Rita. Well, when I'm teaching this idea, in the past when I've been teaching this idea, every time I teach this, I realize that there is something very powerful about the number 3, and it occurs over and over again in the images that we look at. It's a solid number, and it applies in the way that we create our compositions. It applies to the paint we use, and triangle is the strongest form. It's why they use it in construction. You know, if you look at the way they build roofs, for example, you've got that triangular shape, and because it doesn't move. Once you've built a triangle, it doesn't move. Whereas if you have a square or a rectangle, things can fold, you know, this way. So, but that triangle holds solid. That's the idea of it. So this is a really great subject to explore when you're painting, and it's also a fabulous drawing tool. I'm going to show you how I use it in my drawing as well, so that you can identify where the big shapes are and make sure that your composition is working well. Okay, so Ina, nice to see you. Thanks for checking in from Germany. This is great. And anyone who's checking in for the first time, welcome. Really happy that you've shown up. And this is something I've been doing every Friday. Now this is the 20th live stream. I've had lots of problems with my live stream because in some cases things were out of focus, and in other cases, you know, my mic wasn't working properly. And gradually, I think I'm getting better at the tech side of it. But really, I'm hoping in all of these that you're learning something, and there's a message that's coming through. So that's the most important thing. I really do want to teach you some of the things that others have taught me, and while I'm on that, again, if you know of any younger people, or if you know someone you think might be interested in this, in checking in on these live streams, they go live on Facebook, and they also go live on YouTube. And of course, you can always go back and review them on YouTube anytime you want. I think Facebook also keeps it up for a while. I think you can just go back and check in on them on Facebook. But the easiest way is YouTube. And if you're trying to find it, all you have to do is look up Andrew Judd Painting. And then, of course, you know, I have this funny little phrase, watching paint dry. I know some people have actually checked out because it feels too much like paint is drying. So it's not very interesting, but the nice thing is that when it's on YouTube, you can always fast forward to get the information. Something I should mention while I'm thinking about it, it coming up very soon is the Toronto Outdoor Art Fair. So TOAF. If you put TOAF into Google, or if you want to put in Toronto Outdoor Art Fair into Google, you'll be able to see, well, thousands of paintings and drawings from different artists around Canada, and there's some international artists there as well. It's something that it's the 60th anniversary of this particular fair, and it's always been a really great fair. I know some years ago when I was showing, there was a gallery that a gallerist from London, England, who picked up my work, and I had some shows and showed my work in England, in London, England. And that was very exciting. She ended up closing the gallery there and moving to Santa Fe in New Mexico. And my work in New Mexico didn't appeal to the audience the same way it did in London. And so these were the concept paintings that I used to do a lot of, or illustrations, depending on how you want to call it. But nevertheless, it's exciting because you never know who's going to be looking at the work. And this is a really nice way to look at the work because you can do that from the comfort of your home. You don't have to go to an opening. You don't have to rub shoulders with anyone. One of the problems with going to art openings, or, well, I don't know, maybe it's one of the better things about going to an art opening, is that there are lots of people there. So the people get in the way of the work. You can't see it sometimes. And on the other hand, it's nice to see the people who are interested in art and who are supporting the artist as well. Lots of times it's family and friends. And so it's nice to get together this way. You know, artists, we tend to work in our own little environment, our own bubble, if you will. And we don't really get to see too many people until we have an exhibition. So when we have this opportunity to get some feedback for our work, that's a really neat thing. I find that Facebook and Instagram are other ways to get some feedback. It's kind of neat to see how people respond to certain things and not other things, and how they're responding to other people's work. It's all very interesting, but in the end, an artist should paint what they want to paint, what they enjoy painting. And I think that that's really how you improve craft, how you improve your skills, because if you're trying to draw and paint like anybody else, exactly like someone else, then that just becomes hard work. You know, you want to be able to do what you love to do, but you also want to have the tools that you need in order to be able to paint what you want to paint. So, or draw, if that's the case. So today is kind of a fun one. I'm going to show you a couple of images, and I'll talk about these. Let me just drop back here, and we're going to go here. So let me just bring this up, full screen. There we go. So this is my reference, and this was taken in, I'm trying to remember which cafe this was. I think it was down in Vienna, and now I'm really not sure which one it was. But it doesn't matter. I thought it was really interesting, this guy sitting with his newspaper, and if you spend time in the cafes in Vienna, you know this is a typical scene. You get a piece of wood you can kind of hang on to, and the newspaper is attached to it, and you can read the daily news and sit and enjoy your coffee for as long as you want. No one bothers you. And I really love the compositions, the scenes that you see in the cafes. I never got tired of them. So nice to see you, Heike. Thank you for showing. And Bernd, oh, Bernd, I've already said hello. So you're saying hello to each other. That's nice. All right. So speaking of the number 3, well, how does this apply? So I'm going to take you to this next shot here. And you can see that I've broken this composition into 3 equal parts. So when I say 3 equal parts, if you look along the top, you see that I've broken it into 3 segments, vertical, and I've also broken it into 3 equal parts on the horizontal. Those are the white lines, or if you look at the little blue lines that you see near the end of them, that's what that is all about. So I'll often start a composition this way. This happens to be a square format, so it's a nice way to break things up. And in doing this, I get a sense of where the center of interest might be, or the focal areas might be. And we tend to look at people. That's what we do. And so the natural focal point for me would be someone's head. This shape is also broken, image is broken into other interesting negative shapes. That would be the shapes around the subject that you're painting. And I've drawn triangles. You can see from the top of this gentleman's head down to the back, to his upper back, down to his belly, across to his belly, and then back up again to his head. That gives me a triangular shape that's very strong. And none of these triangles, as far as I know, are actually what do they call it? Equilateral triangles. So I don't think any of these triangles are exactly equal on all sides. They're all, somewhat, well, they're all triangles, but different kinds. I won't get into all the kinds of triangles that are available. That's something you can look up. So the green triangles that I've drawn here are sort of my main shapes for the composition. And when you draw a triangle into an image, I'm looking at the negative shapes as much as I am the positive shapes. The positive shapes being the subject that I want to paint, and the negative shapes of the background or the atmosphere. The red triangle that you see here is the largest triangle, and that gives me an overall sense of composition for the entire painting. And it's a nice, big, solid shape that I can follow when it comes to drawing and when it comes to painting. So I've pre-mixed, well, what I'll do, I'll take you to my image here. Let me just see if we can bring these up together. No, that brings me up. Okay. So there we go. So you can see what I've done here. I've again split this image into three parts, 3 equal parts here, 3 equal parts here. And I've taken the triangles that I drew out in my reference material, and I placed them onto this board, this white board here, which is, by the way, an oil gesso background. So I'm painting straight into white, which is something I don't usually do very often. I like to paint into a color, but I thought today maybe I should at least show you lines so that you have a sense of how I might start something like this from scratch. Now these triangles will give me a lot of information about where I can and can't draw in order to make things fit properly. So let's see if I can do this. I don't know if I can bring, yeah, well, there we go. So still see what I've got here in a very small image. I wonder if I can do this side by side. That would be neat. I don't know if I can. I'm still learning how to do this, and I can't figure out why this machine decides to do these small ones over here. Anyhow, there we go. So in the large image, the reference material, what I've done is I've imitated the big red triangle here, and I've also drawn in those 2 green triangles where they would be placed. And I can use that essentially as a frame to hang my drawing from. And this is an excellent technique, by the way, of making sure that your proportions are working properly. So I'm going to go to this view here. I've mixed up some color ahead of time, which I like to do, and that just saves me spending a lot of time mixing color, so while you're watching, you don't go to sleep. This is kind of a sense of the colors that I have here, my palette. The other 3 that I'd like to talk about are 3 colors. So if you want a very limited palette, which I'm doing here, I'm working with a cobalt blue, I'm working with a yellow, cad yellow medium, and I'm also working with transparent oxide red. So the transparent oxide red, by the way, these are all Old Holland colors. And I've got an Old Holland white here as well, titanium zinc mix. So I've used all the colors that I've mixed up ahead of time come from those colors only. And if you use only 3 colors, if that's all you use, plus white, you'll have color harmony. That's just how it works. And if you can give yourself an exercise to only paint with 3 primary colors like this, you'll find that your painting is more harmonious in its color arrangement. One of the big problems with painting, as you know and I know, is your painting can get very muddy and very dirty, and the more you muck around with a lot of different colors, the more confusing it gets. So really don't want to confuse anyone. We just want to keep things as simple as we possibly can, because people to understand what it is that they're looking at, but we want to keep our colors strong and keep the composition strong. So I'm going to just grab a brush, and that's the other thing. I'm going to try to only use 3 brushes. So I'm really going on this thing today. I'm going with, breaking things down. I've got 3 triangles here. I've got, I've broken my image into 3. I'm using 3 brushes, hopefully just 3. And I've also only used 3 primary colors, white, which I think that's fair enough. So let's go to this. I'm just going to go to full screen on this particular image so that you can see this better. And when I do that, I'm wondering, okay, no, that's not behaving well. So you really don't need to see me while I'm doing this. So here we go. I'm going to draw this out. I'm going to go straight in with paint. I haven't done any wash over the whole thing or any color over the whole thing. I could, but in this case, I'm going to just drop color in and draw at the same time as much as I can the big shapes that I see. So let's see how this goes. I'm going to work from the background to the foreground. I want to get shapes working first. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to grab the blues that I see that are outside the window, and I'm just going to put these shapes in place here. One of the nice things about this oil primer is that if there's an area that I don't like, it's pretty easy to get rid of it. I can just wipe it out again. It's very slippery, this surface. And I'm going at this in a very graphic way. So really trying to keep this simple at this stage, using the biggest brush that I have here. And you can see I'm just going, this is charcoal that I've drawn with. The charcoal just disappears into the paint. When I do this, I can get rid of these lines just by going over that charcoal, which is kind of neat. It's not in the way. And as I'm painting here, I'm looking at my reference and trying to line everything up by having these lines here and looking at the reference. I know where I need to go. So it's a great drawing guide, and I know where these triangles are. So this is the preparation time in doing this ahead of time is really worth it, because that way you can just get to your painting and try and put all the parts together. Jigsaw puzzle. Okay. I'm going to reach for a little darker blue beside this. And again, I'm going to try and put this in a fairly graphic way. So I want to keep my shapes, my colors simple. Of course, when I go over the color underneath, that starts to come through a little because it's wet paint. And in this case, that can work very nicely because it should get a little lighter and a little softer as it goes to the top. If you watched the program last week, you can see how I painted wet into wet. And sort of imitated the idea of what Bob Ross was doing, painting wet into wet. It didn't look like a Bob Ross painting when I was done, but the technique is similar to what he would use. So all I'm doing is just trying to fill some shapes here, keep it simple, keep it clean, keep my color clean. I need to. When you're working with 3 primaries, it will harmonize no matter what you do. but you need to keep it clean. All right. So the next area that I want to work, and again, I'm working from background to foreground. So I'm just going to clean up that brush. I've got paper towel here and just really clean it off. Go to what will be the lightest area in this painting, which is a yellow that comes down this way here. Just try in. And you can see I'm just drawing right through that triangle. That was my reference. That's okay. It's a guide. I'm looking at my edges. I'm looking at these areas in my reference and trying to line things up so that they fall into the right place in my drawing. And being aware of those triangles are as I'm painting. Once I've got pretty much everything covered, I know where the shapes have to be, and then I can follow with a more more of a natural kind of painting style. I'm going to go into a slightly darker yellow. I notice that there is one in this reference. So I'm just going to paint this in again over top of that color I put down already. It's okay. If I need to put more paint in, I just thicken it up and do that. Later on, I want to look at my edges. I want to start to soften things down, but these are fairly crisp edges. They're fairly sharp edges in the actual reference. Now I want to go into color behind this gentleman, and this is mostly translucent red. I'm going to bring just a hint of blue into it to cool it down a bit. And this is a place where I'm going to change the composition up a little bit, because the edge of this over here where his head is, the edge is a little too strong up against his face. So when you have coming together, you have to watch out for this, because it creates sort of little tension points that you really don't need. Okay, if that drips down there, it's not a problem, because I'll be dealing with that later. Okay, and when I'm looking at my drawing, when I'm looking at where triangles are, I have to be aware of where his arm comes in. So this is a case where I can be drawing against these triangles and watching to see where this gentleman sits. And I'm going to run this wall here right to the top. And you can see this is very graphic at this point. I'm not really too worried about trying to make everything absolutely, like it's a final brush stroke. I'm trying to do that here. I'm just trying to place things so I know where the major masses are. Okay. So that's the wall behind this person. At least one part of it has kind of the window area. I noticed that there's a darker yellow shape that comes in near his head over here. Just going to put that in over here. And again, I'm looking to see all these lines are helping me as guides to know I have to paint around this person's head. This guy would have never imagined someone who would be painting him online like this, I'm sure. It was one great thing about being in the cafes. You never had a chance to take photos. Whenever you're out and around, it's great to take photos of things that are interesting for you. Even if it's a quick snap, just a quick photo so that later on you can look at it. Maybe it's good reference for a painting later. So I always have my iPhone with me and taking pictures when I can. Now in behind, I've got a darker, behind him, I've got a darker, richer red, and at this point, I'm starting to draw around him a little more. Just going to put this color in here. And I see that there's rich darks. This is fairly transparent the way I'm putting this down right now. It's fine. I can go back in and clean that up later, make that more precise where I need to. And again, always cleaning the brush out. I'm going for the big shapes, right, around everything at this. I feel like I need to get another bit of color in behind him, just above his head here. And of course you can't see his head, but I'm going to put this color in up here. Like color notes, really. That's all this is. This is just helping me to build up to something that will give me some substance to paint against after. Hi Moni, welcome. It's great to see people showing up. This is really nice. All right, I'm going to turn to this other brush now, which is a Filbert brush, because I want to have a little control. I'm going to go into the darkest dark area, which is really him. He's wearing darker clothing, and I'm just going to try and draw this out a little bit here. Again, looking at the triangular shapes that I have, trying to fit these shapes into the right places, and I need to use these triangles as a guide. You know, I'm looking at these triangles. That's my number 3, right? I have to keep thinking about my triangles all the time while I'm doing this. And this goes fairly quickly, as you can see. Just getting my big shapes working here. And this is what he's just wearing, a darker top. That's going to look like. And you can see when you work this way, it's actually quite abstract in a way. And as I do this, I see areas already that I'll need to correct. I can do it while I'm here now, or I can wait later, but I think I'll do it now. I'm going to go back into this color here that I had, and it needs to come down a little further here in order for this to work. Okay. Again, this darker color, it picks up past his elbow in underneath here. And I think he's wearing shorts, but I'm just going to keep it all dark down here. We really don't need to see all that stuff. It's not important. And he's sitting on a chair that's also darker here. So all I'm doing is looking for big shapes right now. That's all I'm doing. Okay. I see another dark area that comes into the newspaper that he's reading. I want to do something here. Okay. Just want to get these shapes working in here. This is a darker, it's almost like a green kind of color, which I mixed up ahead of the way. So it's not like, you know, I'm just winging it here. I've already prepared some of this at a time. So I know roughly the kinds of colors I need. And now I'm working with fairly dry paint at this stage. I don't mind seeing some of this brush work. It's kind of fresh, nice. Okay. I'm going to go with something a little bit behind here. I just want to get these big basic shapes working. That's all. And I see it's a little bit lighter on this side over here. Okay. Still don't see the man. He's going to show up. I'm still working on these really big shapes. I want to go into this area where there's a table in here. I'm just going to quickly paint something in here that roughly indicates where that table is. And there's a chair that goes in behind that's a little darker. Overlaps him. There we go. Now we're starting to get a feel for how it might shape up. I want to start to bring a little detail into this man's face now. And I'm just going to bring my color up around. It doesn't have to match exactly everywhere. I'm just going to bring this in here so that the sense of a shape of a head. And he also has a neck, so I better put that in like so. And you can see now, even at this stage, there's kind of the basic shapes that are necessary. Let me put in some flesh color. Now I'm going to go in again with my Filbert brush. I'm trying to use only 3 brushes if I can get away with it. 3 brushes, 3 colors, and using triangles to inform my drawing. Just going to put in some color here that is kind of a flesh color. I can adjust this later when I need to. This is a really fun way to paint because you really are painting abstractly. That's what you're doing. And it forces you to look at shapes, not things. You know, I'm not trying to paint a person right. I'm just trying to paint shapes that look like they belong in these areas. And I can adjust my colors as I go. Light that comes off the back of his head here. And light that comes in the back of his neck. One of the good things about working with limited color is that it's harmonious if you only use 3. Well, that's important to think about. Always a brush every time I go back to my palette to pick up a different color. I want to get more of a warm. I've got cool light, so I have a lot of warmth in the shadow areas. Now, this is what I would typically reach for, like a cadmium red, and I don't have it. So I'm going to have to use the colors that I have in my palette. Again, I've got cadmium yellow, and I've got transparent oxide red. I don't have a strong red to work with. My transparent oxide is the strongest red I have. So when you limit your palette, it forces you to think about your colors. How can I create more of a sense of red? I've only got transparent oxide red to work with, so this is what I'm going to have to work with. It forces me to really break it down to its simplest shapes and simplest colors. Let's get some color going into his arm. And his arm's slightly different down here. It's a little bit more towards the orange side. And I can't see his hands. That's good. That means I don't have to paint them. Hands have to paint. Doesn't mean you should never do it, but if I can avoid it, especially in a demo like this, I'm happy to do that. I want to paint the arm on the other side. I can see a little bit of that coming in there. So already there's a little bit of a mood that's going here. Okay with it. Let's just see. All right. I'm going to start to bring in some stronger color, some more, well, some good rich darks. I've got cobalt blue here, and I've got my transparent oxide red. Those are the darkest I can get out of this palette. So I'm just going to put some of that stuff in here. I want to anchor these colors. Now I'm going over top of the colors that I have put down already. And I just want to make things a little bit better. Dipping into this rich cobalt blue and transparent oxide red. And I'm getting nice colors coming up. Now I'm starting to think about working from dark to light. So before I was just getting colors down, breaking them into simple shapes, and I kind of started with the background. But now I want to work a little bit more in the tradition towards dark to light. So this becomes a little bit more tonalist in the brush. To have lots of paint out when you're working. Now I noticed when I was mixing up my colors that there's a green that shows. I can't get, I can't get the vivid that I see in the original reference, but I'm going to try and get a green that works. And let's see if I can make this work. There's a green that goes into here. And that will define the color of the top that he's wearing. I need to go with a lighter green against that as it transitions into tones. And this is a stage where I can have a little bit of fun. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the blue that I see coming from the window here. I'm going to pick a little bit of that up in front of his shirt. It's not there in my reference, but I can see how it might pick up from that window there, and it starts to relate these two colors, from what's happening outside to what's happening inside. That's one of the advantages of working with a very limited palette also. You're kind of forced to make decisions as you go. What color can I use to get the feeling that I want to get with such a limited palette? And that's a real challenge. Just starting to refine things a little more. Keep my color flat where I need to. He's sitting on a chair. I see that there's a big shape that comes in here. And another one here. When the paint is wet like this, and it's a fairly slippery surface, you can move it around and adjust it. But really what you should try to do is keep your shapes as simple as you possibly can in order to make this work. Detail comes later. That's the idea. I'm going to go into this color back here. I want to bring a little more. I have to bring it down in value. And got cool light, warm shadow. So we have some warm shapes in here. I might go just a little bit to the green side of that here as well. So we have some nice gray, some neutral colors that happen in this area here. And maybe we can put a little bit more light behind his head here so that it just stands out a little bit more. I don't want to get it too light because that's going to start fighting with what's going on over here. So this is just so that I accent this shape here. That's all. Okay, I want to bring more structure into his face because that really is the focal area. Just want to push this out a little more so that it doesn't interfere with what's happening here. We don't want shapes that are getting too much attention around him. We'd like to have them come up behind him, but not take away from him. And I'm going to define a couple of details in behind here just so I can anchor this window, this wall a little more. Need a little more color to make that work. When you paint this way, it's kind of nice to see the color break up a little bit. You kind of see through it. So it's not all in absolute focus all the time. I could do some of this with a palette knife too. Maybe I'll resort to that at some point. We'll see. You can use 3 different palette knives. There you go. I'm going to make the rules up as I go here. A few careful marks in the right places, and that will give you the essence of what's going on. I'm not trying to paint I'm not trying to photo. I'm trying to make a painting, and that's something to keep thinking about. I know I go on about that all the time, but it really does help to think that way. I'm not trying to, create a photo. I'm trying to create an image that is paint, that is my interpretation of what I'm seeing in front of me. Okay. Use a little more color underneath his chin. And here, let's see if it's dark enough. I need it darker. So I'm just going to go back, bringing a bit of cobalt blue and transparent oxide together. That gives me a darker version of the reds that I have going here. So I can build the structure in his face. There's a dark part right there. And again, I don't have cadmium red, or I don't have an alizarin crimson down even. So I have to rely on my transparent oxide red to make this work. Okay. Sorry about that. You lost me? Sound's gone. I hope you can hear me again. Hi, Wayne. Nice to see you here. You came just at the point where I lost my camera. This is just crazy. All right. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm hoping you can. I don't know why my phone kicks out like this. So there it is. Okay. Great. Thanks, Ina. All right. So I'm just going to pull a little more color in here, just so we have this sense of background going. I wasn't paying attention to my big screen here, so. All right, let me just do this again and solo layout so you can see that. All right. I want to bring some of that outside color that's reflected up against this wall here into this area here as well. So I'm just going to do this. May look a little bizarre initially, but really those kind of colors are happening in real life. So trust what you see in real life as well. So we get that sense of the light from the outside coming through here, and putting that in with a palette knife kind of breaks it up nicely. I can always go back and smooth things down later if I need to. I also want to get some of that really nice, rich, bright yellow, or light yellow, coming into this area some more. Just keeping those edges nice and clean. And a slightly darker yellow against that. So I have a little bit of definition right there. So the window frames. Just using a palette knife now. Again, 3 palette knives if you need to. And magic number 3. Okay. I want to go in a little bit darker behind him here to make his face pop out a little more. And try and get these outside shapes to work. Wearing glasses, so that could be a challenge. All right. Okay. Starting to get the feeling that I want here, for sure. It's always challenging to decide, where do I, sort of stop? Where do I not need detail? How can I get away with less, but still make it count? It still has to work. So that's always a challenge. I need to show this chair in here. I think that's important. It's just part of the composition. And behind this chair is a lighter color because it's picking up the light that's coming from the window, but it's a slightly warmer light. It's not as cool as what we have going here. So I'm just going to put this light in here and then put the supports of the back of the chair into the right place here. Hopefully we can do that just with a couple of brush strokes. Let's see. So I want to do this here, there, and then we've got one big one over here when I'm looking at my reference. And then I can go back again. It's wet paint, so I can just correct where I need to. That's the back of a chair. Sometimes that's all you need. If you see this thing shaking around, it's because I keep touching the phone now so it doesn't disappear on you guys. Always drawing with the brush. I was trying to keep your drawing correct. And to go off the edge. There's a little table in there, and I notice in that table that there's some light coming from the window as well. So let's just put that in place. And soften that outside edge down a little bit, because it's okay for that to disappear a little. It's in behind, it's in the background. I'm going to throw a little bit more color into the front of that table, maybe in here. So we have a sense of foreground, background. Warmer colors in the foreground, cooler colors in the background. That's the idea. Now, when I'm squinting at the whole image overall, and it's really important to squint to look at your big values, your big shapes all the time. You should be looking at that. I want to darken things down. This is where I really want to start to take the eye away from areas that are unnecessary and bring the eye to this individual and what he's doing, what he's reading here. I'm going to go into this newspaper here, which is also a very important part of what we're looking at. This is the story here. So maybe this is the illustrator in me. I want to make sure I understand the story that's happening. Okay. I'm going to pick up some color here. I'm mixing as I go now because I want to be a little more subtle about my colors and also a little more defined in areas. So I'm going to go into this newspaper here with just some good, clean, rich color and trying to get those values working in the right place. That's important. When I talk about values, those of you who are artists, you know I'm talking about how light or how dark things need to be. Also notice on the edge of this newspaper, it picks up quite a nice bright yellow light. So let's just put that in there, again with a palette knife. When you do that kind of thing, you can just, because it's wet paint, I can get rid of that with my finger. There we go. This really takes me back to the cafes in Vienna, this whole process. I can imagine, you know, some quiet music going in the background. A lot of cafes didn't have any music at all, but some of them would have a little bit of music going in the background, and you'd hear the shuffle of plates and, you know, the clinking of glasses and the low ebb of conversation. It was always so great to sit in the cafes and just watch people and to paint. I loved painting in the cafes. It's just really an incredible experience. Very thankful that we were able to do this, to be in Austria, to be able to do this. All right, let's see if I can bring a little more detail into this guy. I want to get rid of some of these whites that I see here, so I'm just going to get rid of that there. It's not necessary. Some of those little lights that are taking our eyes away. Soften areas that I need to soften. A lot of sharp edges going here. So I could do that with a big soft brush. That's a possibility, but let's just maybe hold back on that for now. I'm going to go again into his face and try and clean the color up a bit. This is where I really want to get my shapes working properly. Really have to think about what I'm doing. You know, there's a nose there. I don't want to paint a nose. I want to paint the shapes that leave a nose, if that makes any sense. Paint the shapes around the nose and you end up with a nose. The same goes for the cheeks. Just want to get this sense of light and shadow working here. Okay, that's moving around because I keep touching this phone to make sure it doesn't kick out again. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to try and answer while I'm doing this stuff. Now and then I just take a peek at the comment section, so if anyone has any questions about what I'm doing, I can try and answer. Trying to figure out where his eyes are here, and he's wearing glasses too, so it's constantly cleaning these brushes. Something like what Bob Ross used to do all the time. I guess I have that in common with him. Now, when you're painting highlights like this is kind of a challenging thing because I've got a big brush. I can put in a highlight this way and paint up against the highlight to give me a cleaner edge. Now, when I say against the highlight, what I mean is this. So I can go back against this highlight now to give me some very fine edges. Just pulling the paint around this way. And I'm looking grumpy now. So to get a very fine edge like that, you don't always have to paint it with a fine brush. You can paint against it and leave yourself a fine edge. You can paint against the same edge on the other side, just to define it that way. So you can see how that works. So something my old boss showed me years ago, and I never forgot. I always wonder how he got these very fine little lines around things. And he said, well, I don't paint with a fine brush, I paint with a big one. And I just paint up to the edges this way. I want to get some really light flesh color going off the top of his head because the light's picking up there. And it picks up a little bit on his cheek over here as well. I've got a couple of areas that are dark because he's wearing glasses. So I'm gonna put the darks in first, and then I'll put some light over that to give me the sense of glasses. You can see I'm not being terribly careful here. That's one of the nice things about paint. You can always correct it. I'm going to use my palette knife to pick up the arm of his glasses that go back this way from about here. How are we doing for time? Not too bad. Okay. I want to go back in now and just correct a couple of little things. When I used my palette knife, it went a little too far, so I can go back in and just pull that out. Just using the wet paint to your advantage. I can pull color down from another area, you know, so I can take that wet paint that's in behind, just pull that down. Draw around the subject. Keep it soft. It's okay to soften edges down like this. And the little dark areas that I have there for his glasses, they're very crisp in the reference, so I'm going to put in, I'll use my palette knife for that as well. Just put a little crisp line in there, and then there's no other place in the painting. I don't usually use white anywhere, but this is a place where I think maybe what I'll do is I'll use white with just a hint of blue in it and try and create a nice light color that will work for the reflections in his glasses. Getting control of the palette knife is challenging, so when you do it, you have to do this part you have to do carefully to make this work. I'm just going to tap it down. Oh, I've got too much paint on my knife, I can already tell. All right, here we go. And it looks like he's bug-eyed. It's pretty funny. So I can still go back and just pull, using the palette knife, I can move that light around. There we go. That's all I need to do. Okay. I want to create a warmer color around his ear here. So I've just picked up the cadmium yellow and a bit of the transparent oxide red. I can be a little bit darker in here, and I can bring some of that darkness down, just building the face, building the shapes into the face where I need to now to create more of the structure that I see. I can get rid of some of the glasses there. And I do want to go around the glasses again and just thin them down ever so slightly so they look right in proportion. There we go. All right. I'm going to push colors a little here now. I want to push a little color into the top of his head, so we have a sense of it being round. I'm going to go with a little more color in the back of his head over here so that we get this sense of light that's coming from the background. And just work my way around this so that we have a little bit of what looks like a lot of detail, but it's actually not. I'm just finding my way around his head here. And I don't think it would hurt to have a nice, bright highlight coming off his forehead. So I'm going to grab a lighter color. I'm going to try this. This is a very light yellow. Yeah, that's not too bad. So now it feels like there's some light coming off of his forehead. And maybe I'm going to pick that up a little bit in his cheek. There. And maybe a little bit even in his chin or just underneath his mouth here. Let's just see what that looks like. Okay, you see what I did? I went too far with it, but that's okay. Remember, we can just paint back into it. That's not a problem. I just have to push that color back again against the edge. Just like that. I'm trying not to mix it around too much. Just keep pushing the color to where it needs to go. That's all. Until it looks like a person. Okay. All right. So now I want to sort of tie some areas together down here. I just want to get rid of some of this bright color that's coming through. I don't need it. Just it detracts from the whole painting. I'm just going to soften these edges down here as it comes out to the edge of the painting. Keep that soft as well. I notice that his newspaper actually does come down this way. So let's just do this so that's more obvious. And I think I can be a little lighter in this area here, now that I look at it. This is kind of a fun stage because, again, the paint is wet, and because the surface underneath is so slippery, I'm able to take paint away. So I can take paint away like this just by using my brush to get rid of some of the stuff that's underneath. And you're seeing through the color now. And it's a nice way to create little bits of detail by taking the paint away. I also notice that there's the edge of the newspaper down here comes along this way. I really want to be able to make it read so that we understand what's going on. That's always good. So it's not too confusing. You don't have to show everything, but you should show enough to at least let people know what they're looking at. That's always good. Certainly to get the mood of what they're looking at. Anyhow, I want to make this edge here a little more crisp or a little more defined. There we go. And I can go in with the darks now up against that so that this is very clearly an edge. All right. Now, when I squint at this, I'm finding that these colors here are getting just a little bit too much attention. So I'm going to soften that down. I'm just going to go in with a soft approach here so that you don't have such crisp edges there. We're still getting the light from the outside. That's okay. But I just want to knock that back a bit. Always squinting at your work so you have a sense of where your lights and shadows are. And I also notice that the edge of this wall starts in here. I need to make this darker. I have to put some more paint out here. I'm running out of my transparent oxide red. Bear with me. So far, my phone is hanging in, and you guys can still hear me. That's good. I'm happy. I haven't cut out again. Okay. I'm going to go in again with something a little darker in behind, so that we have a sense of him sitting within this space. So I want to define this window a little better. It doesn't look exactly like this in the reference. That's okay. I just want to get the feeling of what's happening here. What this does is that it frames him. So I'm thinking about the composition here as well. I really want to frame this guy so that he stands out against that background. And putting dark behind him like that makes him stand out against the background. This is kind of the fun stage because you can, well, I like the beginning of a painting and I also like the end because this is where you can tease the image into some semblance of recognition. You can create a little more refined shapes and really looking at the overall painting as you're doing this to make sure that all of your shapes they make sense, so that when you look at it, when someone else looks at it, hopefully they can make sense of it. Okay, so that's working better there now. And now this area here is working better against him because it's a little darker. His head stands out better against the background. I need to arrange his collar so that it is a little bit, looks like it fits him better. So I'm just going to, the reference shows what you're looking at now, but I'm just going to make this a little cleaner here so that that fits him better. I'm also going to go into the background and soften this down. We don't need to see all this detail through here. It's okay. We just don't need it. That's all. Put a little bit more of that local color in there. And maybe I need to pick up a little bit of that green in a couple of other areas so that we know that, yeah, he's wearing a green shirt of some kind. Knock this back a bit because it's too strong. I'm going to bring more of the background in here so that it just is. One of the neat things about working this way is that you can have colors find their way into each other because we're working with a limited palette and everything harmonizes. Even though sometimes it can look really mucky, everything is harmonized. So in the end, it's not really mucky, it's harmonized. As long as the values are working, then your painting is going to work. Again, working with this very limited palette. I want to create a stronger shape here. Thanks, Jerry. It's nice to see you here, and thanks for the compliments. It's nice, always nice to get some good feedback. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to go in here a little darker there and here so we can really see this is a newspaper that this guy's reading. Now I do need to get some more values going in his arm right now. It looks like a great big orange blob, so let's see if I can bring a little more form into his arm. It can use just a few darks in here to define this area a little better so we have a sense of light and shadow. And I've got a huge elbow on him, so I can just reduce that down with something that's, you know, a little darker in behind here. And that starts to work better proportionately. And he needs to be sitting on something, so I do need that support that goes in behind him there. He is sitting on a chair, so we have to make sure that there's a feeling that there's something supporting him. Now this really strong blue here, I really want to try and pull that more into this part of the painting, so we really get a sense of the light that's coming through. And you know, things aren't, it's not like a poster. It's supposed to be a painting, so I want to bring some of the lights, these blues that we see, into areas. So I want to look for areas where I can pick up on that. So I don't see this in the photo, but I'm going to put some of this stuff in here because I think that it will help bring the eye over to him. And you don't want false highlights, so you have to be careful when you do this. But if you put it in the right place where it could be landing and it looks believable, then you got it. So you've got this mix of warm and cool color happening here. And these transitional areas in between. So cooler into warmer into cooler again. This is sometimes a place where a palette knife does a good job. Again, I'm just going to pick up on some of the color I see here and pull that up. You can invent color. It's okay to do that, as long as it doesn't look really crazy or really false. And sometimes even if it does, it's okay, as long as it's not distracting. So one of the issues when you're painting is that you can work on an area for so long that that's all you see. And it's really important to look at the overall, to look at your painting overall. Because when you do that, well, it's the way we see, you know, it involves your peripheral vision. Okay, I want to pick up a few more colors in the table here. It's a very light color. So that sense of light coming from outside. A warmer color, cooler color. I'm going to go into some greens in here and blues. Again, colors that I've mixed ahead of time that I'm using closer to the end. And this is a very intuitive way of painting. So this, I'm not trying to, like I said before, I'm not trying to make a photo. It's not what's going on here. I'm just really trying to get a sense of the mood. I want to show the top of that chair. And I see a couple of little lights peeking through behind the table here. So put them there. If I see them there, put them there. Some light coming from outside. And his legs are in this area down here. I'm not going to try and paint his legs. I'm just going to keep it fairly obscure down here. Just going to keep it dark. We don't really know what's going on here. If it's not important in the photo, if you can't tell what's going on in the photo, well, then you probably don't need it in your painting. So that's just something to think about. Why, if you can't tell what you're looking at in the photograph, then you don't need to paint it in. Now, maybe you have lousy reference, but sometimes your lousy reference is your best friend because it forces you to simplify. I want to try and get richer colors going into this newspaper because it's important. The colors behind his head now are a little too intense for my liking. So I'm going to try and knock that down. In fact, I'm going to bring in a green. I think that will probably help this area. They're just too strong, and it picks up on some of the green we see there. So why not? Let's just see if this helps. Knock that value down. Get some of that green in here. And that's a nice contrast against all the reds that we have going everywhere else as well. So I know before I was trying to outline his head better and make it lighter around his head, but at a certain point, you have to trust yourself and say, well, you know what, that's just getting too much attention. This makes it a little bit more believable. I'm even going to cool that down, that green just a bit, bringing in more blue. And maybe when I get more of that darkness behind his head, that'll also help it stand out. So you can do it two ways. One is to have dark against light, or you can have light against dark. So here we're doing the light against dark, and then it goes darker again into his face. So that works as well. I think that's better. This edge is too strong. It kind of cuts into his head. So I'm just going to soften that down. Just draw your brush along those edges. Let that break up a little bit. It's okay. Just keep those edges soft. Where you have a focal area, you want to have that sense of peripheral around it so that it stands out better. Okay. We're still seeing everything okay. Yeah, you're right, Rita. Why not create something yourself? If you can't recognize something, you can put something in, whatever you want, your own thing. You know, it doesn't have to be what's in the reference. It really doesn't. One thing I find, this space here is a little too strong. We've got too much. We don't. I want to break this up here. In the photo reference that I have, it's quite light. I'm not sure that's the right way to go. Guys, I'm back again. I hope. There we go. That was just brutal. I just happened to be looking when it cut out, so maybe it cut out because I was looking. All right. I'm just going to lighten it up down here, up against the newspaper. Something's happening here. It's not that important. Sorry you lost me there for a second. Hopefully you can hear me. If you can't, or if you can, maybe you could let me know. We've had lots of problems with the internet. I thought I had that sorted today. Okay, so maybe that's better because we've got lighter colors in here. There's something going on, but it's not very important. It's not an important area. It's kind of broken. I'm going to soften this down a little more here. Leave a few edges that are interesting. And again, where it comes into the table, these are not important areas. I want to get a sense of light coming in underneath in this newspaper also. So I can pick up a color that maybe shows the edge of this newspaper here, picking up some reflected light, like that. And maybe hit that with a little more chroma right in about this edge right there. When I say chroma, just a little more intensity of color, that's all. Okay. Really getting rid of some of those runny lines that I see there. And throw in a little bit of some other colors that are interesting but don't interfere. That's the idea. This is sort of, like kind of an impressionist idea. I do want to pull up that edge on the newspaper just a little more right in about here. And maybe a little bit down in here. Okay. Thanks, Linda. Appreciate. I keep like disappearing all the time. It's like I should call myself the disappearing artist. The image disappears, the sound disappears. It's like, okay, there was someone there, and now they're gone, and maybe they'll come back. And well, thanks for hanging in and for being patient with me. I am not a techie person, and actually, Linda, you're one who knows that. I was kind of sort of really old school when it came to all this technology, but here we are. What is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. Okay, I do want to pick up a little bit more of a blue down in this area because it's picking up the light and catching the back of the chair right here. And I'll need a little lighter blue against that so it looks right. And it looks a little bit out of place. Maybe I need to soften that. I'll take a little bit of that away. Okay. Now, where are we time-wise? Oh, 3:30 already. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. I'm pretty much there for today. I'm almost done. So I will work on this a little bit more, but not too much, honestly, because I don't want to lose the freshness. It's important when you get to a certain point. If you start to get tired of what you're doing, it's good to step away from it. Of course, when I'm doing these live streams, stepping away from it's not the greatest idea, because then, well, I really do disappear. So I hang in, and then afterwards I'll do a little bit more work on this and I'll post it so you can see the end result. But it's pretty close to where I want it to be. It's a sense of a guy sitting in the window reading a newspaper, and with a few little details here and there, not too many, I think I can take this to a finish without going crazy on it. All right. I'm going to come back to you now, and let's just do this. There we are. It looks better when it's smaller. Maybe I look better when I'm smaller too. Okay. Hopefully that was interesting for you guys. It was fun painting. I enjoyed that. And hopefully this idea of threes is a strong idea. You know, 3 colors, 3 brushes, breaking your image into 3 triangles, if you can find a way of doing that. That's really a neat way to start a painting, because it gives you a framework around which you can build your painting. It's something I do more and more. I'm trying to really simplify things as much as I can. And maybe I just need to do that as I get older, so I can remember where I'm supposed to paint. But anyhow, I want to thank you for showing up today. If you have not subscribed, it'd be great if you did. I'm still waiting for my number 500 subscription. And when that happens, someone's going to end up with a painting, and it'll be kind of a lottery thing. And that's kind of an incentive. Maybe if you let others know about this live stream, that would be great. And if you like what you saw today, thumbs up, please. That would be super. Take the link, pass it on to your friends. And if it just puts you to sleep, well, then you can listen to this again at night when you want to go to sleep. So I want to thank everyone for showing again today. And please stay safe. Happy painting. And I'm not sure if everyone's still here. I'm not seeing any more comments. So maybe I'm already cut out here. Thanks, Jerry. That's great. Thanks for the comment. Okay, so have a great week. Hopefully I'll see you next Friday. And if not, well, you can always go back and watch some of the other ones again. I think the sound was a little better this time. And yeah, it cut out a couple of times, but I need to figure that out still. Thanks, Bernd. Thanks, Ina. And Linda, thanks a bunch. Really appreciate you guys showing up. And it makes me feel like I want to keep doing this when people are showing up and joining in on this. So be safe, be well, and we will see you next Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.